Thank you for the nice things you said. Bear in mind, he's a little prejudiced. It's so good to be back home. We miss our church and our church family so much. And we both are a little shaking in our shoes because we've not had an opportunity to serve Spirit all that frequently. We have found a wonderful meditation center in Silva, which Marilyn Autry told me about because they had purchased some of her books. When we moved to North Carolina 3 years ago, she said, "Have you ever heard of a town called Silva?" And I said, "Absolutely, it's the next town over." And she told me about these wonderful two gentlemen and their gathering place. So I have had the opportunity to teach a seminar there, and I've been asked to serve their platform, but there's no place like home. There is a book called Lost in Space, written by Michael Dooley, and many of you are familiar with him. Most of the time, what I read of his is over my head, but then he's younger. I'm not. But there was a lovely poem at the beginning of that book, and it says, your name was whispered before you were born. And out from the mist, your image took form. The spirit of life had begun its quest to learn of itself through the ultimate test. A being of light set free in creation to master the gift of imagination. I just love that. It really speaks very eloquently about spiritualism, although it was not mentioned, because so much, actually everything in our lives, revolves around each one of us. The better we can respond, react, and reach out to others, the greater our spiritual growth, the greater our happiness and well-being, and the greater the world will be. Now, I have to say, I've talked to a lot of people throughout life, and unfortunately, some people are still blaming their parents for everything. Now, some of us did that when we were teenagers. Just thought they were just being mean and hateful, and everybody else could do this, why couldn't I? Well, gradually, as we grow up, we begin to understand that was hard for them. But they were trying to protect us. They were trying to teach us. They were trying to help us learn to weigh actions and recognize consequences. So I thought it was very interesting. Blame your parents for the way you are. Blame yourself if you stay that way. And isn't that the truth? Some people are blessed to have wonderful, loving, caring, supportive parents. Some people don't. And yet, throughout history, we read and learn about people who may have been raised with a silver spoon. They had everything they could possibly want. And they didn't turn out to be real great individuals. And then you have other people that had parents that just had their own serious problems, and the individual pretty much had to raise themselves. And I find with those kind of people, again, that fork in the road, some people will blame everything on their parents and turn out just like them. And others will look around and see other people, and instead of being bitter or angry because they were not raised with all that luxury. And because they can see the challenges surrounding them as they grew up, they choose to make a totally different and much better life for themselves throughout history. So, yes, it's so easy to blame others for whatever. And the thing about spiritualism, we recognize we're all children of God. We're all human. We're going to make mistakes. But what have we learned from those mistakes? A dear friend of mine used to want to meet a man, and she just never, ever, yet to this day, has found the right one. It got to the point where she'd be all excited, oh, I met someone, I know this is the one. Where did you meet him? Well, I had gone to a bar with some friends. What does he do for a living? He's a used car salesman. Now, I'm not condemning that occupation. It's very helpful to many of us. I knew before I even asked, what's his name? She had this affinity to be drawn to the same men with the same name, which I will not say. And then she'd be just shattered when it didn't work out. Well, think about this. We all may have other things that we've done that. We just keep doing the same things and keep expecting something wonderful. How many times does it take to get the lesson that maybe we need to go in a slightly different direction? Maybe we need to be brave and do something different. When Ron and I, excuse me, when Ron and I moved to North Carolina, I'm sorry, native Floridian, but the pine pollen still gets me. We thought, how are we going to make friends? Because that was right when COVID hit and so many things were shut down. Well, we finally made our way through, and as soon as things started opening up, we got out in the community. I got involved in being a volunteer, teaching elementary school children how to read and how to read better. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I still do, even though the very early grades are little individual petri dishes. It's so rewarding. No, I don't get paid for it. I'm a volunteer. But the children, well, if you've been around children ever in your life, you know you never know what they're going to say. I learn as much from them as they learned from me. And I met lots of other wonderful people in the process. Everything from principal, teachers, other parents, other volunteers. So that was the start. Then I got involved in a youth recreational facility project. And I got to meet, thank you, and I got to meet other people that cared about the youth in the community. I also got to meet the county council and the city council. And it's been a very interesting process. It's an ongoing project. But again, I'm meeting so many interesting people. There is a wonderful society, the Dogwood Society, that is just focused in North Carolina on young people and their educations. It's a wonderful project. Meanwhile, Ron and I had always said when we moved up there, because that was always our plan, we wanted to get involved in a little theater group. Not on the stage, believe me. But I thought, well, you know, if I could help with costumes or makeup, and Ron said he could help with the building sets and things. Well, this theater that was built in 1940...
Early.
Started out as a little playhouse that turned into a movie theater, and then went back to a playhouse type theater. And Ron and I remember going back in the day when it was all of those things. It had been neglected for many, many years, and the roof actually mostly caved in. So it's been an extensive project working with a wonderful group of people to get this wonderful theater up and going again. Good news, the roof has been completely replaced. New electrical and new plumbing is in the process of being put in, but it is right in town. It's a historical building. So we're going to do everything we can to bring it up to code and then keep that wonderful energy. We've met wonderful people through that. And I'm going to brag on Ron. There is a cemetery that, I don't know why, from the time I've been going up to Bryson City with my parents, I've always had an affinity for this little cemetery that's on a little hill. It had gotten so overgrown. Trees have fallen because of storms. It was a mess, and the grass was up to here, literally. Well, Ron started doing exploration to see who's responsible for the cemetery, who owns it. He called everybody in town and went to all the authorities in town and said, I want to do this. I want to clean it up and start getting it restored. And nobody could find any record of anything. Once the weeds were parted and mowed and so forth, we have found several Civil War graves there with the official government insignia. There are some more modern ones too. But now Ron has taken it upon himself to mow it and weed it and maintain it. And now we're in the process of trying to restore some of the headstones that, you know, maybe a huge branch came down and knocked it out of kilter. We're finding out there's more and more to do when you're trying to restore a very old cemetery. But there's something that just feels good about it. Just feels good about it. Later, perhaps, privately, he can tell you the story about the first couple of times he went there and got started. And you know, it's fun being a spiritualist. It really is. You may have the most interesting experiences, not only with people here on the earth plane, but many from the other side of the veil. And he had the privilege of experiencing that. So we need to reach out. I know so many people nowadays are afraid. I mean, if you watch the news a little too much, it will scare you. Because globally, the world's pretty much a mess. And within our own country, it seems as if, where can we be that we're safe? And it can become terribly overwhelming. Many people have chosen to just stay home. And that's sad, because it does become ever more overwhelming. The more we dwell on negativity, the greater it grows. And it's easy to be grateful, and as Carla said last week, blessed. it can be just as easy to allow the negativity to take over. So I've always, for many, many years anyway, had the theory, and it's mine alone, watch a little bit of the news. If we're totally oblivious to what's going on, our prayers are going to have to be real general. If we can see that there are certain problems, whether it's with elderly or with young people, in communities, pray. People say, what can I do? I can't do anything, I'm just one person. Well, I'm not going to get political, but I will encourage you to vote. Vote what you feel is best. We can vote and we can pray. We can pray. Just think about this. If you pray at home, I'm sure you feel wonderful and you get beautiful responses. When you gather in a group like this and we have a shared prayer, don't you feel that difference, that extra energy? If people are doing this in other organizations, and I'm sure they are, if we're allowing ourselves to be open when we know we're around people who also want to have a better life and a better world, it's uplifting. It's uplifting. It gives us that energy that we're not getting if we're just all enclosed at home. I also read that there are 5 stages in a woman's life. I think this may pertain to a lot of men as well. The first stage is to grow up. Grow up. When we're very young, all we want to do is grow up. When we're not very young, we kind of wondered why. But grow up. In my case, I wanted to fill out. I mean, you know, you reach a certain age and all your friends are blooming and you want to bloom too. Not long after we achieve that goal, many of us want to slim down. We filled out, now we want to slim down. A lot more of us are at the stage where we try to hold it in. And now I'm rapidly heading toward that other, oh, the heck with it. Because we know it's what's within. I mean, of course, it's nice to care about your appearance, but it is what is within. You know, many of you knew my mom. She was 3 weeks short of turning 100. She loved everybody. I never heard her say, ever, an unkind word about anybody. I wish I could say that about me. I can't. Think about yourself. It's hard to send love and to pray for people who have really hurt us, especially when it appears to have been deliberate. We never, ever, ever know what anyone else is going through. We don't know what their physical health is. We don't know what their mental health is. We don't know what struggles they are facing. And sometimes it just comes out. Whether we know or don't know the reason, we have to forgive them. It will destroy us if we don't. And they deserve it. We're not supposed to judge. And there are some religions who say God will judge, God will be a vengeful God. Spiritualists don't believe in that. We don't believe in a hating God that wants us to suffer. We believe in God, our Creator, who supports us and encourages us. And when we make mistakes, tries to help us see how to avoid doing that again. So does this mean when we all make our transition, we all go to the same place? No, that really wouldn't be fair. But as spiritualists, we do know the path to reformation is never closed. So while we may not be with everyone right away that we thought we would, we will be with others who align with our thoughts and our hopes and our thoughts, words, and actions. But the difference with spiritualism is we also know that just as we can proceed in our spiritual growth here on the earth plane, we can also do that in the world of spirit. We can do that. When we pass to the world of spirit, we will be greeted by our loved ones. If you had some people in your life that weren't loved ones necessarily, I would encourage you, have a wonderful time with everyone that you do love, that you enjoyed being around. But don't ever close yourself off to apologies, to regret. Because you see, when we go to the world of spirit, we can continue to learn and grow. Countless times people have come back in private readings, begging for forgiveness. They have learned so much since they've gone to the world of spirit. And when someone I'm bringing that kind of information to is able to say, now I understand, I can forgive. Of course, it helps the person in spirit so much, but it helps the individual here. That ability to forgive will change your life. It absolutely will. It's easy when we know, oops, it was a mistake. If we felt it was deliberate, again, we have no idea where that came from. And it's not for us to judge. Take the higher road, whether it's a mutual employee that can be snarky, whether it's a neighbor that drives you crazy for one reason or another, rather it's someone that you've always had a pretty good relationship with and all of a sudden that turned upside down. Accept that they are human. Accept that we're human, but we're still here. We can work on ourselves. That's a good way to change the world. Finally, I've had the privilege of attending interfaith council meetings, and these were ordained ministers, priests, nuns, an imam, so many Protestant religions. It was wonderful. You got the rules the first time you ever went, and it said, please remember, you may ask anything of any of these other religious leaders about their faith. As long as you do so, asking with respect and listening with respect. One night, we actually had 19 different leaders there, and it's fascinating. The similarities are so much greater than our differences. There may be some different terminology, but the bottom line is we agree on so many, many things. I'd like to, in closing, just read you two means. Well, one is observe. Observe. Do not absorb. All right? And this is with anything in life. Observe, but you don't need to absorb it. You will not complete your faith, your religion, your spiritual understanding, until you love one another. Muhammad said that. The Christian Bible talks about love all the time. Most other religious communities, beliefs, faiths, preach the same thing, the importance of love. Another is God has given us many faiths, but only one world in which to coexist. May your work help all of us to cherish our commonalities and feel enlarged by our differences. That came from Jonathan Sacks, who was an English rabbi and philosopher. Lastly, we talk about the continuation of life. There's an Eskimo legend that I just love. To hope that there are stars in the sky, hope also that rather they are openings where our loved ones can shine down to share their happiness. So think of that next time you gaze at a starry sky. Just consider that a beautiful beam of light and do all that you can to share it. Thank you.